Hi everyone, I'm really excited today for two reasons. Firstly, because I get to meet you all and tell you my story, and also because my 2-year-old didn't wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning this time, so yeah, I'm pretty thrilled. Slept all the way through, so I'm awake. But as this slide suggests, today I'm going to tell you about our initial growth to global scale, what I wish I knew before. First of all, I just want to say thank you to a couple of people. First of all, to the sponsors, so especially WooCommerce. So without WooCommerce, we wouldn't have a story at all. Also to the volunteers today, because without you guys, this wouldn't happen. And I know it's a lot of work. And also thank you to all of you for turning up to this track. Last year I actually presented about our initial growth with WordPress plugins, our initial growth story, and a lot's happened since then. But just to recap, we started doing WordPress plugins in 2010 as an additional revenue stream. And that turned into us becoming a WooCommerce official partner in 2011. I would say we started our growth journey in 2018. Things started to take off. We started to take the plugin stuff seriously. And then it's really only this year that we've started to have our international scaling story. So I want to tell you a bit about that. So just some basics about our plugins. So we have like 19 or 20 official plugins on the WooCommerce marketplace at woocommerce.com, and we sell about half a dozen plugins directly via our own websites. So acquisitions are the quickest way to increase your revenue, but it's not the be-all and end-all to everything. It does not make a viable business. So we had our first acquisition start of 2018. We bought another person's WooCommerce plugin. And then I came to WordCamp 2018. A couple of days later on my birthday, I found out that WooCommerce Marketplace was selling some of their plugins. So I was really excited about it and made an offer. Ended up picking up about half of the plugins that were for sale. And then maybe a couple of months after that, then they had another round of there were some plugin sales. So that time I bought all of them. But it didn't create the business. It wasn't that solved all my problems in life. It was very much that it just helped us scale more quickly and get more customers. So I would really caution on that point that it's a good way as a starting point for something, but it doesn't make a business. So I have this slide because I didn't really know exactly what I was doing, and I didn't figure it out quickly either. So that's my lesson there. So what we did is I bought all these plugins, and I was so excited about it. I told my team, and I said, hey, we've bought all these new plugins. Isn't that awesome? And they were like, well, that's terrible, because they were the ones who had to look after them all. And the volume of increase in customers overnight was so substantial. I hadn't really thought about that. I was just excited about buying these plugins. So that was interesting journey. And then, of course, we did it again a couple of months later. So there were a couple of slightly unhappy people, but we moved past it. Everyone. I'm on good terms. I think I'm on good terms with everyone now. With the market, maybe it's just me, but I want to understand everything about the market that I'm dealing in. So, who are our competitors? What are they doing? What are their strategies? How are they doing things? A really good way to find out what's happening in the marketplace is check out Google Trends Explorer, because it tells you a lot about what the trends are. And if you start to use it quite a lot, you can start to do comparative analysis of what's working, what's trending, and what's not. I'm not talking about Kim Kardashian, but you know, all about the plugins and the people in that marketplace. I think it's really important to have the right structure, and I come from this as a business owner, not as a developer or anything like that. So one of the biggest lessons we learned was we need to recruit in the complete opposite way that we did. So we started when we came into 2019 and we had this massive growth in our plugins. We were recruiting again. We were recruiting developers first. We then recruited a manager for our plugins division. But what we didn't recruit was a technical delivery manager. And if I can say one thing that I learned, it's about that we should have done that much earlier. That role, for me, if you're coming at it from more of a business owner perspective rather than a developer, I can tell the team what I want, the program is what I want them to do, but I can't translate into programmer language what I want them to do. And that halfway through this year, we recruited a technical delivery manager. And what he does is he translates everything. So I say, this is what I want you to do, and he makes it happen. And it might sound like a really small basic thing to some people who are developers and experienced in that area, but for me personally, it made a massive difference. And we're really starting to see the effects of that now. So that's on my things I wish I had known list a year ago. In terms of customer service, when you're scaling, not when you're just starting out, but when you're scaling, having really good technology for your customer service is really important. So we use Zendesk for ours, and we found that's really good. Thankfully, we were already using that before we started this process in our other divisions of our business. But the thing is, when you are managing at scale customer inquiries, you need to have some really good, smart technology which is going to grow with you. So that's why we are using those kind of tools. There's a whole bunch of add-ons you can put on there too, but you just have no idea what's going on. Speaking from experience many years ago, what's going on with our customers if we're just getting emails? You know, you don't have any data and stats on what's happening. Speaking of that, I'm really a bit of a spreadsheet geek or a spreadsheet dork, however you want to put it. And so for me, analysing the data is really critical, and something that while if it's not your thing, you should really be thinking about it. So why is it important? To give you an idea, we have this massive spreadsheet system that we manage, which has all the data about our plugins. And we added a new feature which lets us see graphs of the growth for every single plugin. Is it increasing in subscribers and sales, or decreasing, or is it flatlined? What's going on? And about 6 months ago, I think we added that, and it was only then that we found out that one of our plugins had been declining in sales for the 6 months prior. We had no idea. And you might say, well, the data's there, you can look at it, but being able to analyze and rejig that data so it's more useful to you is really, really, really important. So once you've analyzed the data, reanalyze it, reprocess it, because the more you do that, there's going to be some useless things that you'll find too, but the more you do that, the more interesting and valuable insights for decision making and your scaling you'll find. One of the absolute most important things for us in the scaling process has been looking at where is the highest business value. So what I mean by that is we have customers who are asking for improvements to our plugins. They're asking for upgrades. They're telling us all the problems. There's this bug, there's that bug, and so on and so forth. We have to decide of those hundreds of things what we're actually going to do today. And if we don't do the things that are going to add the most value to our growth first, then we are not going to be able to continue scaling. So for example, one plugin we have is the anti-fraud plugin. And in doing a review of it, we found that it wasn't nearly as good as our competitors, and it lacked a lot of features. And it didn't have much customization, so you couldn't really control how it worked. So what we did is we reviewed it, we looked at what our competitors were doing, we added a whole bunch of features to it, made it cooler and made it more customizable, which it was really lacking in. Out of that, we saw some substantial growth over just a period of a couple of months, because it's about what does the client think is important. So we really need to dig in and understand that. If we don't understand what's the most important things that are going to grow that plugin, then we're not going to see the scale. And we need to have the growth to fund the further growth, so it's really important. Another aspect of this is looking at how more valuable is it than your competitor's plugin, because there might be heaps of competition out there. So one of our plugins, the Payment Express, it's a payment gateway plugin. The value proposition we have there is that I have actually been working with these guys for 20 years, or almost 20 years, and we really understand their product offering really well. And we actually have about 3 or 4 different plugins for different use cases for different customers. So how we would differ from other people is that one thing that we're so experienced in that that's why people would choose us. So you've got to look at how do you compare to your competitors, and do you have a unique value proposition that's different from theirs, or does your product have different and better features? So QA and testing was a bit of a new one for me. I just want to get these things out as quickly as possible. And I say here, get a David. So David leads our QA and testing process, and he's really great. We had a somewhat difficult conversation one day where I said, why isn't this product released? And he said, it's not good enough, Chris. And I said, well, I need it out by 3 o'clock because I want people to use it. And he said, so you want me to release a product which isn't that good and isn't working properly? And he brought up a really good point. And that's why I kind of got this little picture here, because I thought it was kind of relevant. You know, if you're going to release something that isn't great, when you're working with scale, if you have like 1,000 or 10,000 people who are using the plugin, you're going to find out what's wrong with it straight away. And as it stands, our customer service portal is like, you know, boop, 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 with emails all the time, all day, 24 hours a day. New issues and inquiries and queries. So if we don't get that any good when we launch a version, then it's just going to be a real problem. So it's going to backfire. So get a David. He's really great. Don't steal him, because I think he's really good. But that would be a really important one, I would say, especially if you're a business owner rather than like a developer and you don't really understand these things intimately. And learning from that process, as I say, you know, that allows you to refine that process ongoing, so that when you do a new release, it's not half-baked and it's not going to cause lots of problems for lots of people. And understand the secrets of not launching a crappy release. Well, I think we've covered that pretty well. You know, it's not launching a crappy release, that's the secret. So one of the challenging things about scale is that you're going to be dealing with thousands and thousands of passionate people. Like I'm sure many of you, they have run their own businesses, they're really passionate about what they do, and it's their livelihoods. So when something goes wrong with their website and they think it's because of your plugin, then so many different things can happen. So in this case, we had someone who was very passionate about what they were doing, and they gave us 10 pages of feedback about our plugin, us, our company, our general failings as human beings, what we can do about it, what we should have done about it a long time ago, and what they were going to do if we didn't sort it out. So you know, you're going to have these kind of problems, and you're going to have people that are really passionate, but also you need to be really clear on what you're trying to achieve. And if you lose focus because some of you have some upset people, take on board their feedback, absolutely, but don't get caught up in it. And a big one for us at scale is be really clear between plugin support versus free website development. Because a lot of people, they have 119 plugins on their WordPress site, they install your plugin and everything breaks. And it's your fault and you need to fix it. We can't do that. We can't spend that time because we can't afford to give a day away to one client when we have thousands and thousands of clients. It's just not going to happen. So you've really got to make those cutthroat decisions and be clear that you are supporting your plugin and not supporting someone's website in general. We actually used to provide website support as well, but we don't do that anymore for our plugin clients as an additional service. And that's why you need to have a strict customer support policy. Really strict. Be prepared to be a little bit flexible with it. Be prepared to change it based on the feedback, but you need to be strict about it. Otherwise, you're just going to be running around in circles all day. This is probably fits into a more recent one for us and our things I wish I had known before. And it's just so critical. You know, we're on a global platform, WooCommerce.com. That's where most of our plugins are. And, you know, if the sales presentation isn't right, people aren't going to buy it. People want to see what they're buying. They want to understand it better across the customer space. So whether they're developers or business owners. And an example that I mentioned before, our anti-fraud, as part of the upgrades we did, we really promoted that as well. So we did some screenshots on, I mean, it sounds basic, but it's really important, of what it did. We talked about all the features and how cool they were and really spent some time on that. We spent a substantial amount of time on that. In 2 months, we increased the subscribers by 20%. I was talking to the team the other day. I said, what's this big blip here, you know? And it was because of that. That was the outcome of those activities. So you can't underestimate that. But also documentation, because you have your product page where you talk about your product and how great it is. But you're not going to tell everything in that. You're only going to be talking about the most important things. So documentation covers everything else. It tells people how to use the plugin and all the features of it. So it's really a sales tool in itself, a really valuable one. It's a fallback option because people say, well, I didn't really understand if it did this or did that. Rather than contact these people and ask them, I'm just going to bugger off and find another plugin. It's too hard. In some respects, it is a fickle marketplace. So it's honestly, if you look at some of the more popular plugins, their documentation is fantastic. And I'd highly recommend investing in that, even if you don't like writing documentation, because it's kind of boring. Next one for us is our focus is videos. So what better sales tool than a walkthrough of your product? And maybe for different markets as well. You know, a video for developers, a video for business owners, for example. Some of the most interesting ones I've seen have 10,000 to 200,000 views. And who knows exactly what that counts for in terms of sales. But I think it's pretty good. It shows that people are interested and engaged. And I think finally is really about keeping your sanity. I really like keeping tabs on what my competitors are doing in this space. A couple of them, SkyVerge, named in the Fast 5,000 growing companies, $4 million US revenue. It's off the bottom of the screen, but they support 100,000 customers. We've got Store Apps, more than 250,000 people use our plugins. Well, that's fantastic, but it's not the space that I'm in. But you kind of think about it, because there's all this data going on. We have a feed of all the new product releases internally at WooCommerce. And it's just every couple of days, something new. And you're like, oh, I wish I was as good as that. But the reality is, if you get caught up in what other people are doing too much, I think you need to understand your competitors. But if you get caught up too much in what other people are doing, then you're going to be sidetracked and you're not going to deliver on your own strategy. So some really good, I suppose a shout out to these guys. Skyverge, Prosperous, I think, has actually been bought by WooCommerce. They were acquired because I think that they had the subscriptions plugin, which is one of the most popular on the marketplace. Store Apps is always doing something interesting with their marketing. And Yith as well have, I don't know how many plugins, but I really like their approach. So next steps, a nice big blank page, because I feel like there's so much for us to take in the direction that we're going. But there's so much opportunity of which way it could go too. So I'm the person who comes up with all the ideas, or, well, my ideas at least, to new plugins and new upgrades, things that I think could add that business value to our customers and help us scale. But I see we've got about 5 years worth of work. So I hope none of my team are watching this. But there's so much to do. There's so much opportunity in this space. And we're just really excited about it. So from my perspective, I'd love to be able to share with you any ideas or information that you want to ask. So thanks very much. Yeah, any questions, let me know.
Chris, thanks for your presentation. You talked about data analytics or data analytics and the spreadsheet geek. I know we use EDD, but I find getting good quality reports out of that very tricky. And I've tried various other things that connect to payment gateways, and they all have their own nuances and challenges. Do you have any recommendations about how to monitor standard things like customer lifetime value and churn and upsell, cross-sell type statistics?
We get a lot of data out of, because we're primarily on the WooCommerce marketplace, we get a lot of data out of that on a daily basis, so we know exactly what's happening every day. And then we take that data, and because I'm a spreadsheet geek, we put it into a spreadsheet. So it's a Google sheet. That's what it is. It's just a very big one with lots of tabs. But I actually find that works better for us. So I'm sure that when we recruit a data analytics specialist, for whatever reason, then they will recommend more of an enterprise level product. But that's sufficient for us at the moment. But it's not about the data, it's about what we do with it. And so I think being a geek in that space allows me to work with it well, even though it's a basic tool.
G'day, nice talk. How would you compare your sales through the WooCommerce marketplace with the sales from your own website?
Interesting question. I think that WooCommerce has a much larger presence in the marketplace than we personally do. And so, there's a big opportunity to leverage that and make the most of it. I think the idea of working within a marketplace or having some level of exclusivity, which is in some ways what we have at the moment, is valuable. And if you Google some of our plugins, you'll find that they're at the top because they're on WooCommerce.com. So really leveraging that. Our strategy for our own website is actually more about promoting those products as a lead-in to the WooCommerce website, but also for ones that we sell directly, often they're priced at a different point, so they're more expert specialist plugins, and much more expensive than what's on the marketplace. And so we're not, the strategy is not to try and sell as many there, because it wouldn't happen. So you really got to think about how you can leverage other platforms to get the word out. I think that that's really important.
Hey Chris,
Hey.
Luca, thanks so much for your talk. You started off the talk talking about acquisition, plugin acquisition, and when I think about acquisition, especially in the sort of WordPress plugin space, I think about synergy, like two entities coming together to create something that's more than the sum of its parts. So my question is, what does OPMC, when it's considering an acquisition of a plugin, what does it sort of bring to the table that's going to create that synergy? So what extra do you bring? Or is it just purely like an investment play?
Yeah, I think I would probably class what you're talking about more as when you're looking for a synergy with the other side, is probably more, I would call like a merger, because you're trying to accommodate someone else. Whereas for us, acquisitions, we're buying someone else's thing. So essentially what we do with it afterwards is our decision. However, what I would say is one of the acquisitions we did a long time ago, our first plugin acquisition, I was looking for a synergy, to develop a synergy with the developer who was selling, because I wanted us to be aligned. Even though I could just say, hey, look, we'll buy it and this is what we're offering, I felt it was important to develop that. And so in that case, yeah, trying to work together to see, not just about the dollars, but are we on the same page? But the sort of stuff we're doing, we're not buying people, we're not buying a business with a team of people. So maybe that will happen when we've scaled a bit further. But so I think that that's probably not as relevant for us at this point.
Hi. Have you ever had a competitor do something very similar to what you're doing, and how would you react to that?
Yes. I probably address that a different way, and to say that there are people who offer our plugins on other marketplaces, because given the WordPress licensing model, there are sites that offer exactly the same plugin, and for a heavily discounted price. And so I think where we're differing from them is in the value proposition to the customer, because you've got two products that are the same, right? So, like I would say Coke and Pepsi are the same as far as I'm concerned in terms of, but then people would say, no, Pepsi, I love Pepsi, or I love Coke, right? And so how do you attract people to your plugin some other way? Is it how you market it? There's going to be different ways that people make decisions on how they buy those products. And so you've got to decide, do we want to attract as many people as possible, or do we want to only attract a portion of that marketplace? For example, are we only looking to attract enterprise customers or personal users or small business owners, that kind of thing?
Yeah, thanks.
Sorry, what was I going?
It's a big room.
Short-term memory loss.
No, great, Chris. Thanks for the insights into the business. How did you have you had to deal with translation, and how did you go about doing that?
Interesting point. It is something that we're thinking about, but it's not something that we've done anything with. So I know that we had a couple of situations where it was actually more about we've got this drop shipping plugin, and it doesn't, or it converts things to PDFs, and it doesn't work with certain languages. I know that's not really what your question is about, but we've done a little bit of work in that space. But really, I don't think that too many people have asked for that. But I think it's a big opportunity as a value add to the customer. So no, not really, but we're going to.
Okay. Thank you very much again, Chris.
Thanks.